welcome back to the BA Project, where we talk about the good, the bad, and this week, the change of business analysis. My name is Drew, and I'm joined by my co-host, Catherine. Say hi, Catherine, if I can find you.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
And I've also got Christina.
Hello.
Thank you very much. So this week, oh God, I know, this week I am sick. Excuse me, as is Catherine. We're going to be going through some of the most important components of the BA role, and an incredibly massive role in its own right, organization change management. And first up, I'm going to ask you guys and ask the group, why is it so hard to buy in on change? That's our topic number one. So, excuse me, with change, why do we think when we're going into project settings, it's difficult to get customers to actually invest? What do you guys think?
I suppose it's difficult because budget is usually so limited with what they are able to invest in. So I think that, a lot of projects start off by sponsors or program managers looking at trying to cut corners, and unfortunately I think the empathy or the people side of those projects tends to get cut much quicker than anything else. So I think there's a lack of understanding of what change actually does, and therefore it's kind of the first on the chopping block.
Yeah, I would say a lot of.
No, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say a lot of digital transformation projects are. I know they would like to say that they're not IT led, but they still are IT led, and I would say that traditional IT departments don't necessarily think about the readiness for change or what the impact of a new digital solution actually means to the rest of the organization. They're not thinking about the softer side of their implementation, which a lot of the time results in poor adoption. So I think it's being led by people who, like Catherine said, not necessarily seeing the value in the change management aspect of transformation.
And I think you're both spot on. And with that education piece, I've found that needs to happen internally as well as externally. So if your own organization, excuse me, are a little behind in maybe seeing value or understanding the impact that it can have, then it's really going to be difficult to get the customers on board, or even to get in a place where you're in the room and you're able to pitch change. And what I found with change, so much of it is really rooting it in a practical sense and making it relevant for somebody. So how does it impact you? And I think there's certain ways you can do that. And it's going to be different for different people, right? So if you're sitting with the C-suite or senior executives, you want to make sure that the way that you get buy-in from them is talking about your return on the investment. So it's making sure that it's going to keep their stakeholders happy because the user adoption is successful and the project is seen as a success. And you align it to corporate policies and helping them achieve their business targets. Excuse me. But if you're talking to boots in the ground operational staff, it's making their day-to-day life better, and it's making turning up for work a little bit easier, and it's maybe taking some tasks away from them so they can focus on doing the things about the job that they enjoy. And I think if you can target change so it perks people's ears, is that a thing you would say? Perks people's ears? So it perks people's ears. Piques people's interest. Exactly what I was trying to say.
Ears around.
God. So I think if you can do that and just adapt your approach to the person that's in front of you to try and make it real for them, that'll really, really help.
Yeah, I think as well, with with stuff like that where you're targeting C-suite or maybe project sponsors that are at a different level, and they understand why they're doing a project, but they may not have actually disseminated that information across an organization. I think it's very sad that it's a difficult sell and that we have to target return on investment rather than actually making life easier and making people happier. So I do think that comes down to the type of person who's on the project and what kind of remit they've had. I've seen it before where people are on a project and they know that this project is really important to their actual job and their role. So therefore they like the only way to target that is going to be money. But I don't know. I think you can softly approach it as well. Talk about training, practical things like you said, Drew, and kind of even maybe pull out some examples of where training has gone badly, or the pain points that they have at the minute. I think all of those things can kind of hopefully sell a picture of why change is important. I think in most organizations they've had something go wrong on a previous project, or somebody's not working in the way that they want, so you can kind of draw on that experience to say, look, consistency is always key as well. So hopefully you get a little bit buy-in like that.
You know what I found is interesting? The more that the organization that we would work in moves into new markets, in the UK specifically, the maturity perhaps in UK clients when they approach change, I think they're much more ready to hear that conversation, or proactively seek out change consultancy services, versus I know in Ireland we might be a step behind. A lot of it is driven by technical and functional work, and change is a nice to have. So I think there's a shift in mindset that on the island of Ireland versus our UK customers, and I think that's really interesting.
I even think that NI is kind of in the middle, like industry specific. There's some industries in NI that are starting to flirt with the idea of understanding and implementing change management, because they're looking at the sort of mainland UK counterparts. Like some of the industries, like regulation, education, some sorts of those industries, they are excited about change management, and even maybe to a much lesser extent, like I've seen some organizations in those industries utilizing notice boards effectively with regards to change. So something that's as simple as printing out a graphic that says, oh, hey, this is coming, just so they know the name of the new product, or they know the name of the project that's ongoing. And they're putting them everywhere throughout their buildings, so that even if you're subconsciously seeing that, when it comes to go live, you're like, God, I've seen that on a poster somewhere. So like that's something that when I was client side, I would never ever have thought of that. Like when I was client side, when I was client, change scared the absolute life out of me, just because I was set in my ways, and the thought of somebody, the rest of the organization, actually knowing the project that we were working on with regards to change, knowing that was going on, scared the life out of me. Because what if it wasn't successful? What if it never went live? What if it just flopped, and when it did go live, nobody adopted it? If they'd seen posters all over the building, it's a bit embarrassing for the delivery team if it doesn't go well. So like that's another side of, for me, my own experience. That's why it was hard to get buy-in on change, because we were scared of it failing, which is a bit sad.
And it is funny of like how that ties into like the accountability, because if you put that on the poster, you're kind of saying, okay, crap, I have to meet that deadline now, which it hopefully, like it can be a bit terrifying, because then people can hold it over you, and people are sometimes not forgiving when they hear about these IT projects dragging on, or hitting or not hitting milestones that they should have been.
But I think organizations are getting better at involving boots on the ground much earlier. Like I've seen a lot of customers involving their SMEs and their business users getting involved in the naming of the project or the new product, or doing a bit of a prize giving, or a bit of a competition to see who can submit the best names and the reasons why. It's cute, and it's cute and fluffy, and it gets people excited, and makes them feel like they're part of the change from the get-go, rather than something being pushed on them. They think and know that they're a part of that, which is a nice step forward.
So are you working on Project Mac Project Face?
Project Mac Project. Oh, Bodie Mac
Project Face. Do you remember that it went out to the public to name a boat, and it was Bodie Mac Boat Face?
Oh, wow.
That's also what happens when you give the public an opinion.
Got to have a gatekeeper there somewhere.
You're on mute, Drew.
You're on. I'm not sure that we heard that yet.
Oh, damn. And that was really funny as well. Damn. I was delighted. Joke. Oh, no.
So, do you want to say it now, and then we'll edit this piece?
No,
Or
no,
won't?
it's gone. It won't be authentic. No, let's sacrifice it. So yeah, all of those incredible reasons, or maybe obstacles, challenges, and opportunities for getting change. Next, I want to talk a little bit about the organizational success factors that we might have, or excuse me, and the organizational success factors, or the conditions we might find in an organization that can breed a successful change stream. There are tons of them, and a lot of them are almost the counter to the challenges that we would have spoken about there a moment ago. So let's have a chat about, in your experience, what you think they might be. I can go first. I think change readiness is definitely one. A company being honest with themselves at the outset where their baseline is, and knowing, yes, we're in an immature organization, we don't have experience managing change, or this is a huge digital transformation project, and being honest with their prep, with their resource availability, with their budget, and perhaps with their culture as well. I've been in rooms with customers before, and they've told us about their culture and their investment in the project from a people side. And when you stand in front of the customer day one, what you might have discussed in the room might not actually reflect reality. So I think that's a huge starting point. If they're honest with themselves at where they are in that moment in time, if they're not honest with you, then it's really difficult to change.
Yeah, I agree. Having project sponsors that are good at recognizing where they are is actually, like, it's so important, and it's odd that you have to kind of say that that's a necessity, or that it doesn't happen all the time. Um, so yeah, I think all of that. I think change can only happen if it's from the top down. So really getting buy-in from the project sponsors, but also depending on what the transformation is, you need your CEOs, you need your, like, all that C-suite getting involved in knowing about it, because then when you're empowering people to make decisions during workshops, they're going to feel very recognized. They're going to feel really seen, because they know that it's this change is happening, or kind of backed up by the most senior level in the organization. So I think it's really important to get those people to understand what you're doing. Um, I'm
And that's,
trying
oh,
to think.
sorry to cut you off.
Sorry.
I think the understanding is actually really interesting, because with change projects, senior leadership often don't understand what the actual scope or the outcome or the outputs even are. So I think when I put change plans in for the customers before, and they're shocked that it's more than just an adoption checkpoint. They can't believe there's actual artifacts there that have to be created. So I think that's really important when they're an understanding of what it is. Maybe that ties back to honesty, being afraid to say, I don't understand change management.
And that was what I was. Sorry, go ahead, Catherine.
Well, what I was going to say is that, like, success factor one, I don't think there has to be success factors to make change succeed. I think change should be one of your success factors. You know what I mean? Because I think too often you see what is successful, what is our objective, and it's probably return on investment. It's probably, will we want to go live by a certain date? And I think if you can actually bump something like, well, we want to see 100 users access the system and comfortable in the system week one, and we want to see this system deprecated, or whatever it is, and we want people to be engaged with, and call times are reduced, or application life cycle is reduced. To me, it's about actually making change part of your success, rather than a factor to get you to the point of success, if that makes sense.
And I was just sort of going to mention, for me, in past experiences, it's important to have somebody client side that's dedicated to the management of that change. So it's all well and good us producing artifacts or helping them put a plan together for change. But if there's no validation that the business understands what it is we're trying to communicate, and having regular touch points, especially through like a large digital transformation that's going to take years, like you're going to have a churn of staff. It's not going to be the same people that are there. People are going to come in halfway, potentially not understand what's going on. And I've seen really good examples where client side there is a dedicated person or a dedicated team, and like I hear of them doing their regular touch points and doing road shows with the rest of their business, updating material, updating checkpoints, whether they be good or bad, so if they've failed on a deadline for whatever reason, they still communicate the unsuccessful targets that they didn't meet. And I just think that it's we can put all of these great plans in place, but if they're not implemented client side, there's no point in putting a change plan together if there's not regular touch points and not making sure that it goes through the full duration of the project. Then it becomes a bit of a chocolate teapot. It's a bit useless if we don't make sure it's implemented.
And as the change agent or change manager, we need to lean on the internal change lead for the nuances and the people dynamics, just like BAs would with an SME to understand the business process or potential requirement. When you're creating a comms plan, a schedule of events that need to happen, prepping for a town hall or a roadshow, you need to lean on somebody who knows how section A is going to land, how business unit B is going to receive this information. You're not going to be able to do that being in an organization as a third party, not early on anyway.
And there's always the element of don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. So those sort of dedicated change managers will understand that there may be a person in the room that implemented the previous solution. So again, the way in which they communicate with that cohort or that stakeholder or whatever, we could never possibly know. We would obviously be very professional and not bash their old solutions, but I think it's just really important for somebody who knows their people to help us implement that change.
I love that term, telling the customer that their baby's ugly, or be careful not to tell them that their baby's ugly. I love that so much. For context,
yeah, it's easier when the baby is like multiple Excels, and you're like,
yeah. You need to get them to admit themselves that their baby's ugly.
Yeah.
Yes. So the next category that I want to talk to you guys a little bit about is, we touched on it already, is making change practical, is rooting it in a practical sense and trying to overcome the misconception that perhaps maybe change is soft. And this is something I know both of you guys, and for sure me, has experience with clients and people even within the organization. And I think that a lot of that is born out of not understanding what change is. It's being maybe a little uneducated in the impact and the value and the process itself. And I think we can do a lot, to overcome that if we root them in a practical sense day one, early on. For me, I would use a change roadmap. It's really broad. It sounds really silly. It's a one sheet view of what is expected, the milestones, the artifacts, and I layer in the functional stream, the technical stream, the change stream, and all training as well. So the full view of what's happening across the project. But change is there in parallel, just as important as the other streams. But there's milestone artifacts that are created, and people can understand that because they work in a project. They expect a solution design, they expect requirements, they expect a relationship diagram or a data dictionary. And if we can supplement that with just as tangible, practical change artifacts, it's an easier on-ramp for a change program of work, I think, for people. What's been your experience then with that kind of challenge or education piece with them?
But would you show something like that, Drew, ahead of time? Is that a selling point? Rather, like, is that something that you would?
I would take it up a level. Yeah. So if you're at the pitch stage, or if you're pre-sales, I would have change. I would talk about ADCAR at a high level. ADCAR being the ProSci process for managing change. Excuse me. And then I would talk about the software development life cycle, and then milestone moments along the software development cycle. But I wouldn't create that roadmap until I'm in the customer and able to charge for it. And then it's just a bit more detail, because you're basing it on the project plan, making it as relevant as possible or as real as possible. It's still a rudimentary visual versus a project plan, but you still want to make it real, because they're going to look at months and they're going to look at dates to make sure that the solution design is lining up with the benefits analysis. So it comes a little bit later on after you started.
Yeah, and I think I was just going to mention, in my experience, like, I try to be as positive as possible all the time, but with things like this, I think you potentially have to ask the questions, well, what if we don't do this? I don't know if you guys have ever experienced like that coaching methodology where somebody will talk you through, okay, and what else? And then what if you don't do that? And then what happens if you don't do that? like that type of thing, I have found has been my only weapon in some instances where I've got really hard pushback with the usual stuff like, I don't want to pay for that, or I don't think we need that, or we can do that ourselves. And then I have to take a step back and think about, okay, well, what will happen if we don't do this? What will happen if we throw a solution at people? We built it in isolation for 2 years with this small project team, and then we roll this out to hundreds of users, and we don't tell them until the day that we go live. What's going to happen? What are all the bad things that can happen? And it's about helping the client tell me the bad things that will happen, and then it's just about repeating that back, and they can hear that themselves, and they're like, oh God, yeah, no, can't let that happen. So I think this is one of the sort of few instances where I think a bit of negativity or a bit of realization or realism, I don't know what it is, but for me, that's what technique I've had to use to overcome the resistance to change. And I would say most of the times it works, because it is just helping somebody understand what they already know themselves. It's just about vocalizing that, you know.
I think you're right. A lot of being a change manager is highlighting risk and showing opportunity to mitigate that risk. And maybe that's your change plan up front, highlighting the potential risk, the communications event, which is a mitigation for those risks. Same with adoption checkpoints. Perhaps that's an opportunity to react to risks as well. So yeah, risk is a huge part of it, and we really do have to be careful, don't we, in how negative we go, because you don't want to go so far that we spook them. Yeah, so, and I know it's always a challenge. Actually, this is a little off topic. Excuse me. I was doing some, well, I wouldn't say research, but I was doing some reading on presentation skills and presentation tips for a session I was having this week. And one of the guidelines was manage negativity. So in a sales pitch, how sellers generally stay away from negativity because they think, oh, that's going to scare them off. I'm not going to get the sale. But apparently you should introduce some level of negativity to highlight why they should invest in your risk mitigation. I thought it was really interesting. I would always shy away from negativity when trying to sell something. But you just explained better than I did exactly why you should, because it shows them why they should invest.
That's the harsh northerner in me, Drew. Gotta
don't always trust a northerner.
No.
But I think as well, like I think that you do have to bring that level of risk into it. But I know there's that other thing of the doorman fallacy of what the doorman actually does, and C-suite probably, huh?
What's that? I haven't heard that one.
No,
so
I've not heard that.
It's kind of like it's just an analogy, I suppose, for how on the surface what your job title is, but actually under the hood what you actually do. And I think that's kind of the niceness of change management. It actually gets under the hood. Whereas like if you think about it from a really high level, like C-suite management, so the doorman fallacy is the doorman to the management company just opens and closes a door. That's it. That's his remit of what he does. But if you go into a really nice hotel, that doorman is actually your first point of contact. So your first impression of the whole hotel is that doorman, or the whole shop is a doorman. So he actually is going to make you feel like this is a really nice experience. He's going to be that point for you. And that's actually probably the most important part of his job. Also, then he acts as your first port of call for security. He's going to notice if people are hanging around. He's going to notice that if your customers feel uncomfortable leaving the shop or leaving the premises, because he's going to notice that people are around. He's going to be the person who gets the taxi. So there's all these other areas of like safety and the way your customers feel about your product. And I think that's something that needs to be explored a little bit more when there's people in the room who are maybe a little bit above, or not above, sorry, but beyond what people are doing on the ground. It's kind of like, well, change is going to say what they actually do, what the impact to them is, and what is actually important about their role, and how we can facilitate that or not within the change, to make sure that they don't lose the aspects of their jobs that they really enjoy and they really love, and that actually is really important to the overall company, but maybe is being missed out on.
Yeah, that's really interesting as well, as keeping what works. Excuse me. And I know we take that approach with process analysis, why wouldn't you take it with change? And it sounds so simple when you say it out loud, but maybe that's not factored in every time. Not everybody wants wholesale change to their day job. Most people wouldn't. And how often does a company ask that question? What is actually working well? It's almost always about the problem.
Yeah. I also think like maybe it's an easier sell since COVID, which it sounds like I have, but since COVID, I think one of the biggest things that people got so annoyed about and that frustrated people and made people worry was that the government wasn't actually telling us what was happening, or we couldn't say that in 5 days we would be able to see our parents, or in 5 days we'd be able to go here. So if you put it into practical terms of like, well, how did that make you feel? This is going to be similar because this is this person's job. It's there every day. It's something that probably, where like their whole life, 40 hours a week is such an important part of your life. So if you don't have a roadmap to how that looks in 10, 5 days or 2 years, you're going to get nervous, you're going to get frustrated, and you're probably going to start talking badly about whatever it is that you don't know about. So
that's the second government observation you've made in this podcast.
Is it?
It's borderline a conspiracy theory podcast at this stage.
Oh, well.
Aliens.
Join us next time. I wish I had tinfoil here now beside me.
So I think that definitely covers how we can make it practical, and hopefully people can take away some actual tools there, or even go and look into some of the artifacts that you guys mentioned. And I like the doorman fallacy. It's the first time I heard that. I love that one. Next up, I'm going to talk a little bit to you guys about the alignment between the change stream and also the functional and technical streams. I think that's been a challenge, excuse me, with any change program that I've worked with, where you have separate parallel streams, and the change stream rarely has as much investment as both the functional and technical. So you're trying to claw time from those resources. And back to the education piece, maybe the developer, maybe the architect, or even the business analyst either doesn't understand or agree with the change approach. So it's difficult fighting that uphill battle. With your experience for both of you guys, what have you found that works well, or what drives success in making those parallel streams work? Was there anything that your change agent or yourself did to make sure that you both had sight of each other's work? Maybe
I would say that I've seen really good examples of, like, again, it comes back to what we started talking about, was the hires up or the project sponsors or the client having financial buy-in to change. Therefore, they give their change manager more time on the project. And I've been in the engagements where the change manager has been part of daily stand-ups with the rest of the team. So the change manager is completely embedded within BA, QA, dev, everything. They've been there from the get-go. They've been in my workshops and they've called out places where they're saying, more on a UI UX thing, they're saying, that's too many clicks. I know the users won't like that. So it comes back to it comes back to us selling it as well, making sure that the client understands the value in it and buys into it and puts enough time and resource to let them be part of the whole implementation team. Because if they're just dipping in sort of sporadically every 6 months and they're having a half an hour conversation with a project manager to understand, right, well, where are we, and looking at some dates and seeing what we slipped on, to me that's not enough. And like there's a massive fear, like for all, like us as well. If somebody came in and looked at how we did things for right now, like even if we wouldn't like to admit it, there's some element of panic that people's going to look at that and say, you guys do not have a brain. Like you can be doing this a totally different way. And when I was client side, when we had digital transformation, like before I became part of implementations, when I was just I was a forecast analyst way back when. And when we had transformation moving out of spreadsheets and into an actual product, there was consultants come in and they asked me, how do I do everything? And I was like, oh my God, I am going to be exposed here. People are going to know that I have been pretending this whole time and I don't actually know how to do this, because the methodology
I use Google and then I come here to cry.
Yeah. Cry. But like it's overcome. Like the change manager needs to be there for those. I would have liked a change manager at that time to calm me down and say, look, this is not the objective of these consultants coming in to rip your work apart. It's to help you understand how we can digitize and get you more time back to actually perform analysis on the outputs rather than just being able to put spreadsheets together and get an answer. And then as soon as you do all of that work that maybe takes a week, your forecast is out of date and you have to do it all over again. You don't get to the point to be able to analyze. But I was so much in my own head. I would have liked somebody to have told me that. And I wouldn't have taken it from a third-party consultant. I'm not going to trust them. I would want one of my own people to tell me that and help me understand I know I went on a rant there, but my own personal experience. But
and it's true, because that authenticity that you're going to get from internal staff of being able to say, look, this is nothing to do with a bad way of working, and we're not trying to come in here to rip up everything that you've put together. It's trying to make things a bit more efficient. And I think, like that, maybe it's trying to say, not focus on the negative of what you're doing right now, but focus on the opportunity of what the implementation or the discovery is gonna get you. I think as well, like for me, like it's so important, and I know I kind of harp on about this all the time, but like the ways of working is just so important. Like you should never have a trainer doing a needs assessment without a change manager who's done an impact analysis to understand how these people are actually going to be changed. I had a meeting with a company who was doing a merger, and that changes emails, that changes, I now have to have my signature updated. It's real granular level, but those things are really important to people. So like I think it's and like it is, because it's not as obvious maybe as and like I know maybe this is a bit cliche, but people do have a real identity about what they do in their work. People kind of are very proud of it, or whatever it is, and like you have to try and think about like that impact to them on a like scale that you don't know how they feel about it. So I think it's just really important to have that ways of working conversation and make sure you tie in one element from change with what's actually happening, connect those two things. I know, like from a BA perspective, I think it's really important that we understand the wider change implications, because that helps us with how we talk to people. As you said, Christina, if this person has created the existing system, if they're the person who uses the reports and that's their baby and they're in charge of it, you're going to try and be softly with them and make sure that they still feel like the owner of it, and they still feel, I know you always say this about like, not being the alpha in the room, but making that person feel like they still have that control. And I think the only way we know that, and the only way we get the best out of people, is trying to have either a change management hat on or actually communicating with the change manager at the time.
Yeah, because there needs to be that buffer. We can't always be that person. Sometimes it's like, I always come back to the fact that not all conversations need to be had by us. So there's other people in our delivery teams that are better suited to have nice conversations or difficult conversations. And like those people that have implemented that solution 20 years ago, they are the most important person in that room. Like they're the ones that hold all the knowledge. They know all the gotchas. Like if we didn't know the gotchas, we could go and rebuild it, and we're just giving them what they already have. And sometimes that like if we think of my personality, when I would have just been fearful and reluctant to help, like that, just because it was my work, and I felt as though I was being challenged, and it's scary. So to have somebody that's on your own side as a buffer in the middle to help us understand the best way to communicate with that person, and maybe they need to have sidebar conversations with that person as well, so that we can ultimately get the best from them. And like I said, I've recently had engagements where the change manager has been really good and really heavily embedded in my workshops and everything. And it has made the experience so much nicer. And I have real confidence in the fact that when the product is rolled out, there will be that readiness for change, because that change manager and that change team has been so on this from the start, to the point where they've got like pens with the new logo on it, and they've got stress balls, and they've got all that sort of fun stuff. There's fun, there's excitement around it. So it's been really nice just to see even though the product hasn't went live yet, I can already see the benefits of having change like heavily embedded in the delivery.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
I found it's stressful. Yeah, that was stressful. And I found myself with it really starts at the planning stage, and even before pre-sales, that we're ensuring that you give as much weight to checkpoints between functional, technical, and change as you do between functional and technical. I'm currently a change agent with an Irish public sector organisation, and in the project plan, there's opportunities for me to meet the BAs and for me to meet the SA to play back the work and the efforts that I'm doing. It's not directly impacting them whatsoever right now, but they know going into workshops that those SMEs that I'm meeting at town halls and roadshows and playbacks are the same SMEs, and they just have that context. And maybe it will be important, maybe it won't before we actually get the system in front of them, but they have the context, and I can understand the nuances of how people are reacting to certain features, whether that be good or bad. What are their fears around how their job might change? And that's something I can't get from sitting in a workshop, because I don't have the time and the project to sit in every workshop. So it's so important that I have those milestones with BAs to just get a summary view of the pulse of the business. I know it sounds really corny and really cheesy, but it really is, because I can't be in those workshops. It's so valuable that I get to join some of those stand-ups and join the weekly calls just to understand in broad terms how things are being received.
Yeah,
that's the end of our main topics. Before we go to the last one, our last topic, I wanted to go through some interesting stats that I found on Change this week. I'm going to go share our Miro board, our BA project Miro board. Now, this set of stats that I got is from a blog that I love called the Walk Me blog. I don't know if you guys have heard about it. It's so good for org change. I absolutely love it. Sorry, I'm going to show you what it looks like now.
Isn't Walk Me a software? Is
Walk
the same?
Is Walk Me a software? Oh, I didn't know that.
I thought it was kind of similar to like Learn or something.
Is it learning software?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. They do such good change stuff.
I don't know if it's the same people, but maybe. Interesting.
I am attempting to share my screen for people that aren't. Oh, that's not what I want to share. Nope.
Looks good though.
Looks good, yeah. Little plug. Little plug.
Stressful don't look like.
I'm going to share Miro. Sorry, that took me a second. You guys can see this okay? I'm going to zoom a little bit. Tell me if that's okay.
Yeah, it looks good.
Perfect. And for the benefit of people that are listening and watching, let me just run through these and we can discuss them if that's okay. Now, before we go to these stats, this is US-based data from as recently as October 2022. Starting with this, 47% of organizations that integrate change management are more likely to meet their objectives than the other 30% that didn't incorporate it at all. Only 34% of change initiatives succeed. That's a crazy stat. 79.7% of people need to adapt their business every 2 to 5 years. And that's totally understandable. And definitely we'd see that with industries we work with needing to invest in technology. 1 in 3 CEOs fail to achieve the desired outcome from past transformation initiatives. 2/3 of workers experience burnout crisis, which further causes transformation failure. Workplace stress accounts for 8% of national healthcare spending in the US. Wow. Yeah. And digital transformation market is projected to reach 1.009.8 billion. So just over $1 billion by 2025 in the US. Some of these I was really surprised at. I don't know about you guys. Definitely the spend in digital transformation. That's huge. And the workplace stress, 8% over there. Is there any that jumps out to you guys?
I think that, like you said, Drew, that last one there, the spend. Do you not think that this is maybe where BAs might have been some time ago, before industries really saw the value in having BAs? We might have been looking at stats like this years ago. And now this is like the next thing that people are realizing that's so important. So I suppose it's positive. It's nice to see, because we now see the success, and we know that people value business analysis, and hopefully change management is going in the same way, just a little bit behind, because I suppose it's BAs that help to drive the change. So maybe it was that the BA sort of practice and methodologies needed to be embedded first, and then this is the second step. This is like phase 2 of just building up the full suite of things that make digital transformation a success. So it's great to see money being invested.
And I think with the technical landscape, it's obviously ever changing, and we're relying so much more on technology to do our job every day. So maybe it's not that surprising that the spend is so high, considering, and if you tie that with the observation there that 80% of businesses have to change every 5 years, if that change has some technical element to it, that's going to drive that spend as well.
Yeah.
What do you think of the one there that mentions burnout crisis causing transformation failure? I actually, 2/3, I wasn't expecting it to be that high. I definitely thought there were some elements. I think that's huge.
I think it's people not getting resourcing right to start with projects, isn't it? Or maybe that the people drop out and they don't replace them.
I was just about to say that, like, we see it so many times in like projects where SMEs are being told, do your 9 to 5, but also you have this whole big project that you need to run with as well. Like, I suppose, like, burnout, I think at the minute, there's so many variables to burnout, but like definitely on a transformation, it's trying to get resourcing right. It's also knowing that, like, even if you're working from home, you should be logging off at a certain time and not actually coming back online. I think that there's so much that needs to be set up from the get-go to avoid that. It is high though.
Big number though, isn't it? Like like Drew, I didn't think it would be that much, but I suppose we see it all the time, don't we? In our careers in delivery, like we see that. It's hard to think of a project where there hasn't been some sort of overloading on the business, like you said, to be expecting to do the 9 to 5, but attend all these workshops and give me artifacts and sign all this off and be at demos. Like, it's impossible, you know.
And especially with SMEs, there's definitely a wealth in difference between what they thought they were signing up for or being signed up for and the reality. And we see that when it comes to sign-off windows being pushed out, they just can't get to the data dictionaries and user story sign-off. So it's not shocking that there is some elements, but to me, the numbers are pretty high.
Yeah.
Can I talk to you guys a little bit? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like, it's funny when you think about, like, if people understood that they're probably going to be in a position, say, for 10, 15 years, so they're going to see 3 major changes, 3 huge kind of overhauls to that business within their time as like management or time as CEO. Like, if they knew that up front, would they put more onus on change as well? If they understood that this is something that is not going to be one and done, it's going to be a constant throughout their life, maybe would they feel differently about it? And would they say, okay, at the very start of this, I'm going to start thinking about my own change process and the internal change process, because it's not something we're going to do once. We're going to do it, you know, at minimum 3 or 4 times.
Oh, yeah, that sounds expensive.
That's what I was just thinking, because like we often deal with clients that they say, look, I want to future-proof this. I want to be using this for 10 or 15 years. But the reality is that the needs will outgrow the product. They will, you know, they'll take on more services, or they'll start doing something a bit different. But if they thought about that when they were spending all this money on this first implementation, you know, like, I don't know, it would just be interesting for our customers to understand the reality of the fact that they will go through transformation, you know, 2, 3, 4 times.
And then there's customers that we've all met that have absolutely planned on a phase 2 or iterations or improvements that we'll never see again. And maybe because I don't know, they don't have the budget, or maybe I don't know, it's fear of going through that process again, or maybe there was severe burnout with the people that were involved. But yeah, it is interesting. Before we go to our final category, can I talk to you about from WalkMe again, big fan. There's a couple success factors that they listed for success for change, and they were really simple and then maybe an oversimplification, but I really like them. Can I walk them through? Sorry, here we are. Let me know. Can you see those? Okay.
Yeah.
And for the purpose of people listening and not watching, I'll call them out. Number 1, establish a two-way communication effort. Number 2, make them feel valuable by asking for their opinion. 3, be with them through every step of resistance. And 4, establish a new strategy that benefits them more. And I know that sounds like an oversimplification, but org change can sometimes be almost too big a piece to bite off. So organizations just don't try. But I'd always be a big proponent of a little effort beats zero effort every single time. And I think if you, in broad terms, can approach change with these 4 pillars, then that's a brilliant starting point. And you can obviously approach it to varying levels of investment. But if you stick to those 4, I think you're onto a winner.
It's a nice, to be honest, they're nice models for like workshop facilitation as well. Like that if you can kind of grab this and pull it into how you approach workshops and making sure that your communication is not just lecture style, that it's very collaborative. The last one, establish a new strategy that benefits them more. That's an interesting one because I have worked with people whose approach is they will do what we tell them to do. And the benefit is company or organizational, but it's not necessarily for the people. No, I think you can always find benefit for people. I think you can, like, if you look hard enough, you can definitely, there's wins there. There has to be. But yeah, I think like this is a funny one because your new strategy might just be something that doesn't benefit everybody, which I think, is an interesting, you have to look at that and say, okay, what are the mitigating factors here? And how do we make this a benefit, even though it may be just, I don't know, the strategy is for like more money or, saving money. And that's not necessarily a benefit to all people.
And that use case you mentioned there, and I don't want to put words in Christina's mouth, but it sounds like the type of organization that Christina might have worked in where they were afraid to go out to the business to ask for change. It's really prescriptive. We don't want to ask you because we don't want to know. This is the system you're getting. Which it doesn't set us up for success.
No. And that's them that's them just thinking, okay, well, if that's the product, it's off the shelf, it must be what we should be doing. But they're not getting under the hood and understanding what people are actually doing in practical terms, which is a little scary. That's something that we absolutely don't advocate for. I suppose in our roles as BAs, we need to get under the hood and make sure that we're not going to make people's lives worse. And if we are, by pushing an out of the box product, it's understanding, like I always come back to the fact that organizations do things the way they do them because that's just how they do them. And that's for us to break that down and understand, is that the right way? Are there little nuances that cause that to be the reality? Or have we got to then, with the change manager, communicate to hires up to help them understand why we can't just push a product on people without doing this sort of proper analysis or looking at potential customization if it's really a need.
Like one of my worst nightmares as a BA is a workshop full of managers or senior managers, because you're just not getting a true picture of how the work is actually done. So thank you for stepping through them with me. We have one category left, and quickly I want to just talk about the importance of change from within. By change from within, we mean being maybe a business analyst or a functional consultant, or within that project team, or it could be within the organization itself. Catherine, if you are thinking of change from within, what do you think is going to serve the project the best? What have you seen has been the biggest opportunity?
As a BA, but like maybe doing both?
No, either from the BA, from you being a BA driving change as an advocate, or from what you've observed from businesses internally outside the change stream. Maybe it's people going back after a show and tell and championing the demo. What have you seen has worked well?
Like to me, I think a lot of it is making people feel heard. I think you can empower people, without putting a lot of pressure on them. to feel heard, to feel like all suggestions kind of matter. Not all suggestions are going to be good, but they do matter because it's
Not all mine.
yeah, well, we don't listen to your suggestions anymore. But yeah, I think making sure people feel that they're being listened to is really important, and I think BAs are obviously going to be the first kind of port of call for that. I also think BAs can play back requirements with a change hat on. We're kind of saying, look, the reason why this is like this is because of this and this, and these are the benefits that you're going to get from this. Like a lot of times in workshops, I think it is useful to say, well, what is the output of this? What are you getting from it? Like reports or whatever it is. But I think making people see or even think about the outcome is really important. So I think you can do that from within a project, even if maybe they have felt like they didn't want or couldn't afford a change manager. That's something that the BA can do. I think training needs assessment is also really good. If you like, from a trainer's perspective, the needs assessment makes those people feel heard as well, and it's targeting what are going to be maybe sticky points for them, and making sure that they have practical labs for training is going to be a way for them to feel like they're gaining ability, gaining knowledge, so they're not just going to be day one chasing their tail and absolutely terrified to even log in. So I think if you're not putting money into change, then try and put it into training and making sure training is really, really like good. Yeah, I think that's kind of from me.
Great. Christina, any observations from within the organization? What has worked well? Or even from your role as a business analyst advocating for change in workshops, the nuanced approach to maybe sprinkling in some information about the product that might help someone's job, but not overtly being a change manager yourself?
Yeah, it's helping, like you said, it's helping them realize the other things that they might be able to do. Like if I come back to my experience, what I was talking about with being a forecast analyst, I spent all of my week producing a forecast, but I didn't get to do the analysis part because it was so manual. I didn't have enough time to actually understand what that data was telling me. And then I came to Monday again and I had to start my forecast upload, and I didn't get time to actually use it. So it meant that it was being used to make large purchases, large expensive purchases for raw materials that were perishable. And I didn't have time to have the confidence in my forecast because I just spent so much time pushing numbers. So for me, change on that, I would have loved to really understand that was going to help me be more confident with my numbers. But there was when I was going through that change, it was just panic for me. It was like, oh my God, they're going to figure out I don't know what I'm doing. And there was just all that mind talk. So
I have all this perishable goods and I don't know what to do.
I added an extra zero to a seed order one time, and changing 40 ton to 400 ton of a perishable good is a very scary thing to do, and you'll never do it again after you do it once. I promise you.
Where are all these seeds now?
God knows. Maybe they've just flown across Ireland and they've pollinated everywhere. I don't know. God knows where they are.
Your bedroom, apartment.
Yeah. But like that's experience that I carry through with me to my clients. So I think of like the fear that I had and not having any change management, and just not even having a sounding board, because I was a one-man band when I was there. There was nobody for me to bounce off to think what's actually happening here. So even if there's not a dedicated change manager there, I put my old self in that room and help somebody understand that there's you'll be able to do X, Y, and Z if you can work with me on this automation of this part of this process. That it means you get to have a layer up and have more confidence in the outputs that you're giving people. Because like we've all reported incorrectly, we've all done that. We've all put something together, sent it on, we've not sought peer review, and we're like, God, I wish I had more time. Isn't it? Like, just you want to kick yourself. So like that's an example. I think you mentioned that in the last podcast, Drew, that was one of your like big things that you wish you would have done sooner, was to get peer review and things. But again, if you're dealing with a really manual process, you don't have time. You don't have time to check it yourself. You don't have time for somebody else to check it and wait for them to come back and you to do your fixes. There's just no time. So I think something that everybody wants more of is time. So if we can help people understand that going on this digital transformation can help get them some more time to be more efficient and more confident with their outputs, I think that's a good thing. And the other thing that I've experienced recently is like the training needs analysis that Catherine mentioned is like so vital. But hardware analysis is something that we need to take on as well, not necessarily in our remit, but as a change manager client side. If we've went through iterations of having to use different browsers, and some browsers get deprecated, and things like that. Sometimes that's something that organizations don't think of. They don't think to consider that. And then you go into a UAT cycle and they're like, oh no God, we don't have that browser, we can't run on that browser. But our products have to run on certain browsers, so it's like software, hardware changes, they need to be considered as well.
Yeah, full holistic view.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. So before we wrap up, excuse me, this week, I wanted to thank both of you guys, both of my co-hosts for being here. Christina, thank you for this week. Catherine, thank you as well.
Thank you.
That's us. We'll see you again next week. And in the meantime, please comment below. Tell us what your top tips are for managing change. Do you agree with us? Do you not agree with us? Be kind if you don't. Do you have tips from your own experience? Tell us in the comments and tell us why. If you want to get in touch with us, if you want to write for the BA project, learn more about what we do, or just get a steer on how to get started as a BA, you can find us at thebaproject.ie or thebaproject.co.uk, or simply at the BA Project across all of our social media. Thank you for watching and take care of yourself.
Bye.
Bye.